All right, let's talk about Kriya Yoga. Today, we're going to go way beyond the yoga mat to uncover what's really yoga's original action plan for the mind, laid out thousands of years ago by the sage Patanjali.
You know, when you think about yoga, it's easy to get kind of overwhelmed, right? There's vinyasa, hot yoga, ashtanga, all these different styles. It can make you wonder, okay, but what is the actual practice behind all these poses? What's the real engine running under the hood? Well, it's a fantastic question, and you might be surprised by how straightforward the answer really is.
According to one of the most important texts in all of yoga, the answer boils down to just one number: 3. Yep, that's it. A super powerful 3-part formula that's basically the engine for real transformation.
And that is Kriya Yoga. As it's defined in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it's this incredibly practical, hands-on discipline. It's really designed to do two main things. First, to help you build a stable, focused meditative mind, and second, to systematically weaken the very things that cause us to suffer. The cool part is, it treats spiritual freedom less like some fuzzy, abstract idea and more like something you can actually build, an engineered outcome of dedicated training.
Okay, so let's break down this formula. Pillar number 1 is tapas, and we can think of this as, well, constructive friction. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but this has nothing to do with pain for pain's sake. It's all about intelligent, purposeful training for your mind.
Let's be honest, most of us kind of float through life on autopilot. We're always looking for what's comfortable, trying to avoid anything difficult. Well, tapas is when you consciously decide to introduce a little bit of a challenge, to intentionally push back against those automatic habits. It's like the grit that's needed to polish a rough stone until it's perfectly smooth.
So what does this look like in real life? Well, tapas is what builds your impulse control. It's that ability to feel discomfort and just sit with it without immediately reacting. This could be something like holding a tough yoga pose for just one more breath, or sticking to your daily meditation even on days you really don't feel like it. It could even be fasting or community service, but here's the super important part. It's always purposeful effort, aimed at clarity. It is not about self-harm or trying to build some kind of hardcore identity. That's just the ego wearing a new costume.
All right, on to pillar number 2. This one is called swadhyaya. Now, it usually gets translated as self-study, but we're not just talking about hitting the books here. Oh no, it goes much, much deeper. It's all about turning that lens of study inward, onto yourself.
So the real goal here isn't to just collect a bunch of facts and trivia. It's about becoming an explorer of your own inner world, your psyche. It's like you become a scientist, and your own mind is the laboratory.
And this practice has 2 parts that work together. First, there's inner reflection. That just means watching your own thoughts, your emotions, your patterns, without judging them. Then there's outer study. This is where you dig into philosophical texts to get the tools, the language, the concepts to actually understand what you're seeing inside. You see how they feed each other? One gives you the raw data, the other gives you the framework to interpret it.
If we wanted to use a modern psychological term for this, we'd call it metacognition, and it is an absolute game changer. It's the ability to see a thought pop up in your head and recognize it as just a fleeting event, rather than a direct command you have to obey. That little bit of space you create right there, that's where all the freedom begins.
And that leads us right into our third and final pillar, Ishvara Pranidhana. Okay, I know, this one can be a little tricky because it's all about surrender. But, and this is a big but, in the context of Kriya Yoga, surrender is not about being passive or just giving up. It's actually a really powerful, active strategy.
Yeah, it's so important to get this right. This isn't weakness. It's a strategy for freedom from what the Source calls compulsive selfing. And what's that? It's that nonstop, anxious voice in your head that feels like it has to control every single outcome, take credit for every win, and defend the ego like it's a fortress. Sound familiar? So the goal here is to kind of shift your whole orientation. It's about doing your absolute best work, whatever you're doing, but then letting go of the results. Offering them up without being obsessively attached to the outcome. This dissolves that feeling of egoic authorship, that exhausting burden of feeling like you are the sole doer who has to manage everything. It's a fast track to seriously reducing anxiety and inner conflict. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our 3 pillars: effort, study, and surrender. That's the ancient theory. But what does this actually look like in practice today? Well, let's take a quick look at a couple of major modern traditions that are built on this exact foundation. For example, if you look at the lineage of Paramahansa Yogananda, they present Kriya as a very specific psychophysiological method, an inner science of breath and life force that's passed down through initiation. Now contrast that with the Ananda Marga tradition. They treat Kriya Yoga as this comprehensive daily system, complete with a structured curriculum, moral codes, mantra, the whole shebang. So you see, two pretty different methods, but they're both pointing toward the very same inner transformation.
So when you put it all together, the ancient theory, the modern practices, what's the big takeaway here? What's the bottom line? It really comes down to this one simple but totally profound idea. Freedom isn't just something you hope for, it's something you can train for.
A really good way to think about Kriya Yoga is like a three-part control system for your own consciousness. First, effort, or tapas, supplies the disciplined energy. Then, insight, or svadhyaya, offers the feedback for course correction. And finally, orientation, ishvara pranidhana, aligns all that effort towards something larger than just your ego. And they all have to work together, right? Because practice without insight becomes rigid, and insight without practice is just talk. They absolutely need each other to work.
When you boil it all down, the entire philosophical bet of Kriya Yoga rests on this one powerful premise. Freedom is a trainable skill. That's it. Freedom from reactivity, from suffering, from the tyranny of your own ego, it's not an accident. It's the natural consequence of a reorganized life. So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Looking at these three pillars, the disciplined effort, the insightful self-study, and the strategic surrender, which one of those is calling for your attention right now? It's a question worth reflecting on. Thanks for joining me.